Welcome to Warsaw. My name is Dr. Frank Henker-Stefani. I have been working as a scientist on nicotine and alternative products for many years. I'm here at the Global Forum on Nicotine, the best place in the world to talk about tobacco harm reduction and a very good place to meet the community and experts. I'm looking forward to interesting talks. Yes, hello. It's an honor and a very big pleasure to be joined by Professor Riccardo Polosa. You are physician, professor of internal medicine and respiratory disease in Catania, and I think you are one of the pioneers of tobacco harm reduction. Perhaps you could summarize, how did you get interested in tobacco harm reduction and how did your engagement start?
It's a long story. Many of you probably know that I've been involved in smoking cessation and prevention for a long time. So I was also I also established smoking cessation centers in Sicily. Probably was the first one to establish a smoking cessation center in Sicily in 2001. And so I took interest in the prevention from smoking-related disease and specifically smoking cessation. And in 2009, I met this guy. He was a CEO of an Italian manufacturing distribution company of electronic cigarettes. He just discovered the product in China during one of these travels. And, he decided to market these products in Italy. He became rich overnight, basically. He contacted me. At that time, I was the president of the Italian League Anti-Smoking, the LIAF. And he said, look, Professor Polosa, you're doing exactly what I'm doing. You're saving people lives because you're helping people to quit smoking. I'm doing exactly the same thing with my product. And he showed me. It was one of the first time I was looking into a real electronic cigarette then. And I was a bit skeptical, to be honest. I was very skeptical. I said, look, I understand your enthusiasm, but I'm a little bit like St. Thomas. Seeing is believing. So after a few months of discussion, I convinced the guy to invest in what then became the first randomized controlled trials on electronic cigarettes, the famous ECLAT trial, where we were able to show that electronic cigarettes had the potential to help people, even people who were not intending to quit smoking.
Yes, but many people were skeptical, and unfortunately, many people remain skeptical even if the science started to get clarified. And even today in Germany, most people, a majority, is still believing e-cigarettes are as dangerous as cigarettes or even more dangerous. And one reason perhaps is are flawed scientific studies. And you always promoted high standards, especially in the research on harm reduction. And I think you founded a Center of Excellence for Acceleration of Harm Reduction. Maybe you could just introduce the work of the center and...
Yeah, before talking about the Center of Excellence, let me go back to the skepticism. The trajectory out of skepticism is not easy. It wasn't easy for me. It took about a few months before I became interested and convinced that there was... electronic cigarette could be a very good tool for harm reduction, but I fully understand people that are still skeptical. The way out of skepticism is to put yourself in research and touching with your own hands the reality of these products and what they can offer to people. Going back to the Center of Excellence, yes, the Center of Excellence is being organized in a way that we have at least 80 academics from the University of Catania and from other academic entities from all over the world, about 20 other countries globally. And the mission is to accelerate the knowledge of harm reduction through science, possibly good quality science, And also we are looking into new innovative ways to identify the risk. Also toxicological studies, epidemiological studies, behavioral studies. That's what we do.
Just to clarify the issue, would you be willing to confirm maybe the assessment that vaping products are at least 95% less dangerous than conventional cigarettes? Or have you more detailed, more recent information to give an assessment?
We addressed that 95% famous quote from the Public Health England that it was derived from our initial, let's say, consensus studies, which was carried out in 2013. We took a different approach this time. We are very we know that one of the problems in science is replication.
Yeah.
Replication is it's a very base of true science, the truth in science, and we are of course it is a problem in different areas of science, not just in tobacco science or smoking related science. The approach we've taken was to synchronize, to standardize in 5 different labs in order to replicate studies on cytotoxicity caused by tobacco smoke and by cigarette aerosol emissions. The way we did, I think it was very clever. We provided the same equipment to 5 different labs all around the world. We provided the same training, same standard operating procedures, and we carried out this cytotoxicity experiment. Our cytotoxicity experiment confirmed not the 95% quote by the Public Health England, but we were able to show a range of 80 to 99% reduction in toxicity, depending on the constituents that you were going to measure or you were going to use to expose on human airway epithelial cells. So, all in all, yes, we were able to confirm what the Public Health England said.
Well, if somebody without scientific training is trying to get an overview on this, searching scientific literature, you recognize an overwhelming inflation of negative bad news. E-cigarettes are upregulating cytokines, they are accelerating heartbeat, they stiffen blood vessels, everything which is bad. How would you propose to distinguish good science and bad science? Are there general criteria everybody could adopt to get a substantial and profound overview?
In specifically to what you're referring, oxidative stress, endothelial dysfunction of the vessels and blah, blah, blah. First of all, let's keep separate acute studies from chronic studies. Acute events may occur and may induce changes in our body. For example, in relation to what we measured long time ago in endothelial, in the vascular system, can be also caused by exercise. Even exercise can cause exactly the same changes that were measured after acute exposure of vaping devices, as well as acute exposure to cigarettes. And so this is one aspect, not considering acute exposure. It's meaningless for public health, from a public health standpoint, and also from an individual health standpoint. The other aspect that you need to consider is standardization. And that's the reason why the replica studies I was talking to you about just a few minutes ago, it was so important. We standardize all those 5 labs to produce this exact exposure system and exposure condition that were mimicking the normal condition of use of the product. And that's critical, because if you don't follow those standards, and you don't follow those exposure condition, which mimics normal condition of use, you overexpose cells, you overexpose systems, and what you're going to see is damage.
Yes, but if you would like to do long-term epidemiological studies, I think you have the problem because the population are often mixed. They just ask, are you vaping, have you vaped, but they do not record the status as ex-smoker. So it's quite difficult really to design proper experiments. Is there a way forward really to improve the situation, to come to more meaningful data?
You're 100% correct. I was talking about clinical observational studies and in vitro studies, so you are referring specifically to large surveys, epidemiological and population studies. Of course, one of the most important confounders in epidemiological studies is the previous smoking history. If somebody decides to switch to a non-combusted nicotine delivery system, it cannot cancel outright the previous smoking history, which is going to be accounting for some of the damage that you're measuring or some of the symptoms that you are recording. So that's the reason why we are now focusing on people who are using this product but never smoked in their life. So we are using a super clean population where we can really assess the absolute harm or the absolute risk, potential absolute harm or potential absolute risk of this product over a certain period of time. So number one, is very important to avoid cross-sectional studies, because cross-sectional studies cannot ascertain causality. You cannot say whether it was first the egg of the chicken and vice versa. So you really need the longitudinal studies. They need to be large. They need to assess clinically relevant endpoints, study endpoints. And also they need to take into account the confounders. The most important confounders, as I said early on, is the previous smoking history.
Yeah.
You need to account for smoking history. Statistically speaking, you can do some juggling to avoid the influence of previous smoking history. However, it doesn't fully work. Also, you need to take into account not only the smoking history as a dichotomic confounder, yes or no dichotomic, but also in terms of the quantity of the previous exposure. So pack years, which is an expression of total exposure to tobacco smoke in the previous years, is very important and needs to be taken also into account as a confounder in epidemiological and population studies.
Yes, but we know that most vapers are ex-smokers, so there are hardly yet any substantial numbers of clean vapers who never smoke. How do you try to overcome these problems?
Scientists are overcoming the problem just by focusing, as I said before, to specific clean populations, and I refer to those electronic cigarette users who never smoke in their life. Of course, these are not very easy to find, but they're growing. We know there's with the widespread popularity of the products, a lot of people who never smoked in their life, they're starting using vaping, and it's a substitute of smoking. So it's pretty much obvious that people will make a choice. Hopefully an informed choice. And to the best of my knowledge, there are only few studies looking into this. And we just completed a systematic review, which is a scientific approach that scrutinizes papers based on the quality and on the study design. And based on this approach, which is high quality in terms of scientific approach, we identified only 5 papers. And surprisingly enough, none of these papers have identified any risk. However, there are limitations. The first limitation, these papers have just looked into symptoms by using just questionnaires. And unfortunately, there's limitation also in the duration of the follow-up. The longest duration in the follow-up in these surveys is up to 2 years, which is, of course, not enough to let's say, to close the case.
Yes.
The case is not closed. But up to 2 years, they haven't shown anything. In 2017, we actually published a paper, probably the first clinical investigation looking at clinical endpoints in vapers who never smoked in their life. When I say clinical endpoints, I mean that we also include high-resolution CT scans. And in these individuals, we could not spot any alteration in their high-resolution CT scan. So lung images were clean even after 3.5 years from their initiation to vaping. And these were people who never smoked in their life. Of course, it was a small study, and now we are launching a much bigger study, which is called Veritas. We, together with my team, with my global team, we were able to amass a very large cohort of vapers who never smoked in their life. I think we are now over 1,000 people. We already completed the first wave of analysis, which means it's going to be a cross-sectional study, but this will be the beginning of a longitudinal studies. We really hope to raise the funds, more funds, to make sure that this cohort will be analyzed for many, many, many years to come. And the more years, the more answers.
Yes, but I understand you want to accelerate research on harm reduction. You want to raise funds, but I also understood that there is an option for everybody. It's called crowdfunding to contribute and to support these studies. Maybe you could explain how that works and how...
Yes, we are designing a crowdfunding initiative to sustain our effort in the Veritas study. I think this has to be an effort that needs to be sustained from the public, to be honest. The people have their own right to understand whether these products are harmful or not in the long term. I quite frankly believe, based on the toxicological data, that it's very unlikely that these products are going to cause any health problems in the near future. Also, because even there was a problem, because they are technological, innovative products that can be innovated and explored and corrected. I'm sure that there'll be plenty of opportunities to resolve problems if there is some over there. It's not like cigarettes. Cigarettes cannot be corrected. There's been a lot of research on manipulation, genetic manipulation of tobacco leaves. And yes, there's been some reduction in one constituents, but there was no reduction in the other constituents. And in the end, there was no way of reducing the overall risk from tobacco leaves.
Yes, and if you like, we could, of course, put the details of the crowdfunding initiative in the video. And I think many people are interested and recognizing that public funding are going down. And I would like to thank you for the interview. It was very informative.
I thank you very much for the interview and for the opportunity of speaking of something that I deeply love. I'm in love with tobacco harm reduction. I think it is already a revolution in public health. And in spite of the strong opposition from different organizations, I'm pleased to see that the product is gaining popularity nevertheless.
Yes, thank you very much. And
Thanks.
it's a very big honor to have you.
Thank you.